at the end of the day, everybody wants, right? It's a
No.
natural human emotion. Everybody has it. It's just in a way and a matter of how much you have it and like who you're having it with.
Do you think that you have a right to?
Yeah,
What makes you say that?
because it's my reproductive right. It was given to me to have children,
What's the purpose of?
to have children.
Arguably, sex has two purposes. A, create new human life, which I think our society has forgotten about. B, emotionally bond with the person that you're having sex with. That's what your brain is designed to do. Every time that you have sexual intercourse, your brain releases oxytocin and it makes you feel emotionally bonded to that person, which is why hookup culture is so damaging, because it's not transactional. It's not supposed to be transactional. It's supposed to be bonding. I think that line of thinking is what's led to an extremely pro-abortion culture. I think that's what's led to an extremely pro-hookup culture. I think that's what's led to women being stuck in this zone and men being stuck in a zone of not being able to.
We hear this narrative so often now. A generation of young women was told that if they followed the modern blueprint to academic success, independence, and hyper-ambition, they would unlock a lifestyle of effortless luxury. The message sounded appealing. It promised freedom, comfort, and endless admiration. Designer fashion, curated vacations, the perfect city apartment, and a line of admirers waiting to impress. It was marketed almost like a universal upgrade. Just pursue independence, and the world will reward you. Before we dive in, drop a comment. Does modern culture create unrealistic expectations for men or for women? Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss what we break down next. But here's a part that rarely gets discussed. That ideal was never about everyday life. It was a highlight reel sold through entertainment, influencer culture, and aspirational messaging. It's not malicious, but it is selective. What people saw were outcomes, not the effort, strategy, or realism behind those outcomes. This is where expectations begin to clash with reality. When someone truly believes that adulthood automatically guarantees luxury, admiration, and attention, disappointment becomes inevitable. Because in the real world, admiration isn't handed out, it's earned, and often not through lifestyle aesthetics alone. And notice the parallel shift with men during the same era. While women were encouraged to chase glamour, men were conditioned to chase stability, work, income, structure, responsibility. Both sides were sold ideals, but the cost of attaining them was dramatically different. So the issue isn't that ambition is wrong, it's that ambition was tied to outcomes that only represent a small percentage of real life. Now we're watching many young adults confront that gap between expectation and reality, and it affects dating, career choices, lifestyle standards, and emotional satisfaction. That's where the disconnect begins. Because when expectations are built on curated narratives, reality feels disappointing even when it's actually normal. And that tension continues shaping modern relationships today.
If women divorce men 70 to 80% of the time. I would argue in relationships, it's probably similar. Men aren't leaving, women are. So to a guy's point of view, he's going to commit to this girl. And what does he get? He doesn't get purity anymore. You know, these hoes. You know, he doesn't get youth anymore. So he doesn't get either of those things. A lot of times she already has a kid. So he's not fulfilling his mating strategy. On top of that, even if he does find a good woman that maybe has the qualities he's looking for, she was going to want him to marry her, right? And what does he get out of that? Oh, she can leave and take half and take my kids. And she's paid to take my kids away from me. She gets more money if she takes my children. And so from the men's point of view, they're just kind of like, F it, because like women.
There's a larger question unfolding here. When we talk about equality, what exactly do people mean by it? Because often, equality is imagined as access to the good parts of another group's experience status, admiration, flexibility, independence, but not necessarily the responsibilities or sacrifices that come attached to it. For decades, men have been expected to perform under pressure, take on physically demanding work, endure long hours, and provide stability even when emotionally drained. Many young women today want the rewards of equality, freedom of choice, respect, autonomy, but not everyone is aware of the full cost attached to those privileges. And that's where tension begins. Equality isn't only about having opportunities. It also involves sharing burdens. When someone says, I want the same treatment as men, it includes the reality of traditionally male responsibilities, high-risk jobs, manual labor, Roles that involve physical strain or unpredictability, jobs like road construction, field engineering, emergency response, transportation, or industrial work, which historically have shaped men's physical and emotional expectations. But not everyone actually desires that side of equality. Many prefer career paths that feel more comfortable, safer, or more flexible, and that's absolutely valid. What matters is acknowledging that different life paths have different trade-offs. The bigger challenge is when people want full equality in outcome without acknowledging differences in effort, lifestyle choices, or vocational paths. Modern society works best when equality means equal opportunity, not identical expectations, because identical treatment comes with identical pressure. So the real conversation isn't who deserves what, but what choices come with which realities. That is where mature decision-making begins, not based on idealized equality, but on informed, intentional expectations about work, lifestyle, and contribution.
Trust your man around other women?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you trust other women around your man?
No.
If women don't even trust other women, why would they expect a man to trust women?
When you look at the past century, especially the mid to late 1900s onward, society changed dramatically. Women gained more freedom in career choices, financial independence, and even in openness around relationships. That was a major cultural shift. Historically, many women did not have the space or social permission to make independent romantic or lifestyle decisions, and that changed rapidly in just a few generations. But now we're entering a different transition, one where increasing numbers of young men are prioritizing personal growth, independent living, financial autonomy, or simply seeking stability on their own terms. That doesn't mean men are abandoning relationships. Rather, many are choosing not to engage in systems or expectations they feel no longer reward mutual effort. When individuals, men or women, begin living independently, there is always a ripple effect. Any system where two adults traditionally support one another becomes harder to maintain when each person moves separately. Historically, households were built through shared contribution. When that structure dissolves, living expenses become less shared and more individualized. The real concern isn't that women will be destitute, but that some people, both men and women, may end up unprepared for the financial realities of living alone, especially in societies where cost of living is rising, where long-term jobs are harder to secure, and where lifestyle expectations have grown more expensive due to social media influence. Where support comes from may differ. Some rely on family. Some rely on dual income relationships. Some rely on government programs. Some rely on personal earnings or entrepreneurship. None of these paths are inherently wrong. Each is just a different system of survival. The bigger question is whether modern expectations align with modern realities. Independence sounds glamorous until independence requires consistent effort, sacrifice, budgeting, or delayed gratification. And what we may be seeing now is not a gender issue, but a life planning issue. People who build stable careers, save thoughtfully, and develop financial literacy, regardless of gender, tend to maintain independence. Those who assume independence happens automatically often struggle. So instead of framing this as one gender losing, the healthier conversation is this. Are young adults being prepared emotionally, financially, and practically for a life that demands personal responsibility, whether single or partnered? That's the crossroads society is facing now.
Women get really offended when I tell them this. But the reality is men are babies, yeah? And they really are just babies. Now, when the wife, and this is not her fault, but when you have kids with women, when they naturally have kids and all of these things, they are designed to just focus on the children. It's how we're designed biologically. We have the hormones, we have the obsession, we get so much oxytocin from just kissing that child. What happens then is she doesn't even see her husband anymore. So he comes into his home and almost feels like a stranger in his own home because it's like mom and baby, they're so connected. Baby's always a bit like connected to mom. She can't switch off. He'll go for dinner with his wife and she's thinking about the baby. Slowly, that husband feels more and more neglected. And what happens then is, because it's so weird to say to your wife, why are you always with the baby? Can you give me a kiss instead? It's such a weird conversation to have. So what they end up doing is seeking that attention elsewhere. Now, it's not all men. Some men dive into the parenthood with their wife. They hold their hand, a wife's hand, and go straight into the children. But other men, especially if they didn't receive a lot of love growing up, they need that personalized attention. So when they're not getting it from their partner, instead of communicating it, they go source it somewhere.
Throughout history, social influence has played a major role in how families, communities, and even entire lineages continue. In earlier times, a woman's ability to form strong partnerships emotionally, socially, or through shared goals often shaped the stability of her household and the well-being of her children. In many cultures, influence was not about control, but about cooperation, negotiation, and mutual benefit. What people sometimes forget is that influence looks different depending on the era. It might have been expressed through emotional intelligence, household management, strategic partnership, or simply being someone who could maintain peace and unity within a family. Historically, men often held formal power, but women frequently shaped decisions through communication, intuition, and relational skill. When historians say certain traits continue into later generations, it usually refers to patterns of behavior, cultural teachings, emotional habits, or learned interpersonal skills, not just biology. Children often inherit approaches to communication, relationship building, and conflict resolution through upbringing, observation, and family norms. And that's still true today. Young people don't just inherit physical characteristics, they inherit values, expectations, and relational strategies. A person raised in a stable, cooperative environment tends to repeat that structure. Someone raised around conflict or manipulation may repeat those patterns unless consciously changed. So the deeper takeaway is this: healthy influence creates healthy environments, and those environments are very likely to repeat across generations. It's not simply about who had more power, but about who learned how to build connection, trust, and shared outcomes, because behaviors that support well-being tend to endure.
Hyper users of Instagram are also, they're sadistic, Machiavellian, psychopathic, and narcissistic, and they optimize for short-term mating strategies. So they're promiscuous, and that's a marker for antisocial behavior. So antisocial people, broadly speaking, have more sexual partners. They start engaging in sex earlier. They're more callous in their utilization of themselves than others.
Would you call that toxic femininity? Is there such thing as toxic
absolutely.
femininity?
We know what toxic femininity is.
Okay.
It's the female version of antisocial behavior is reputation savaging. Yeah, gossip, innuendo, backbiting, and females can be very good at that. Now, men can do that too, and they do, especially on social media. But it's definitely the case that social media enables female antisocial type behavior. Clearly, feminine pathology scales magnificently on social media. God only knows what the consequences.
There's a common cultural expectation, especially for boys growing into men, that they should simply figure life out quietly, independently, and without support. Society often praises men only after they've overcome challenges, not while they're experiencing them. As a result, many women encounter men who appear stable, composed, and successful, yet have little awareness of what it took to reach that point. That's where the confusion begins. When someone sees the result without seeing the process, it becomes difficult to understand what they're actually drawn to. Many men are taught to hold everything together, to push through setbacks, silence emotional difficulty, and perform under pressure. This creates a version of masculinity that looks effortless, when in reality it required immense effort. And then there's the disconnect around preference. When people ask, what do women want? The answers are often vague, shifting, or influenced by trends more than clear personal values. What someone says they want and what they end up choosing can be entirely different. This isn't about blame, it's about a lack of clarity. Modern expectations have changed quickly, and many young adults are still sorting through what they actually value versus what they've been encouraged to value. A stable partner, someone ambitious, someone emotionally expressive, someone who offers security, someone exciting. There are contradictions everywhere. Someone might want emotional honesty, but also a partner who never appears affected by stress. Someone might want independence, but also unwavering presence. Someone might want leadership, but also democratic. And when both people enter relationships without clarity, frustration becomes predictable. So maybe the real question isn't what do women want or what do men want? It's what outcomes are people actually prepared to support once they choose them? Because attraction alone doesn't create commitment. Commitment grows when ideals match actions and when expectations are understood, not assumed.
Don't realize, and women will vouch for me, we don't actually say what we mean. We say what we feel.
That's a very difficult thing for a lot of guys to comprehend, because we hear what you say and then we think that's what you mean, because men speak and think in terms of logic. And if you say something, we assume that's probably...
Historically, displays of vulnerability often created emotional bridges. When someone shows they need help, support, or reassurance, it invites others to participate, to contribute, protect, or engage. Men have traditionally responded to that dynamic, not because weakness was admired, but because mutual reliance creates a sense of purpose. But society has shifted. Many women today are more self-sufficient, accomplished, and authoritative than previous generations. And with that shift, relationship expectations naturally change. When independence is emphasized, partnership requires a different entry point. Men may no longer feel needed in the traditional ways that once defined their role. That doesn't create conflict by itself, but it does change how motivation works. Some men now redirect their energy toward personal goals, career advancement, fitness, or creative pursuits, not out of resentment, but because responsibility without connection feels empty. When someone is prepared to contribute, but there is no space to contribute, they look elsewhere for purpose. And that's where balance becomes important. Relationships today aren't based on dependency. They're built on mutual willingness. The question becomes, what does partnership look like when both people can technically survive alone? And the answer varies widely. Some couples share responsibilities, others specialize tasks, others form partnerships based on emotional support rather than financial exchange. The deeper point is that relationships must evolve with social changes. When both individuals bring autonomy, authority, and self-direction, the motivation to stay involved can't be obligation, has to be chosen. So the focus isn't on vulnerability or authority being better. It's about learning how modern independence can coexist with mutual support, because true partnership requires space for both.
Family is a very permanent decision, and you don't have a job and your only thing in your head is, I need a family, I need a family. Your priorities are completely out of whack.
That's the propaganda that I'm talking about. For all of human history until 50 years ago, everyone had their children at 18, 19, 20, 22 years old. It worked for thousands and thousands of years, and now suddenly you're going to tell me that that doesn't work. No, of course it works.
My mom is almost 70 years old, and she has literally 12 children. We did grow up and struggle, and my mom still tells us that she preferred that she never had children simply because she made our life.
Wait, hold on. Your mom told you she would have preferred
and she said
to not have you.
All of us, no. Because the life that she gave us was so bad.
She's saying that they have what it takes to take care of the children. If you know that you financially with two people are not strong enough, no offense, why would you have 12?
There's a growing conversation today about whether modern feminism has delivered what it promised. Not because empowerment is wrong, and not because independence is harmful, but because the messaging may have shifted from opportunity to identity. In earlier phases, the movement focused on education, safety, legal rights, and autonomy goals that genuinely improved quality of life for women. But recently, some people argue that the messaging has changed from you can pursue anything to you must pursue only one lifestyle to be considered successful. And that's where dissatisfaction sometimes emerges. When meaning becomes tied to achievement, alone career status, income, lifestyle, aesthetics, many people, not just women, begin to feel emotionally disconnected from their choices because fulfillment doesn't always come from external accomplishments. For many, it comes from connection, belonging, shared commitment, and personal identity. Yet modern narratives often downplay those elements. Some women discover that chasing milestones without companionship feels isolating. Others pursue relationships but are told that doing so makes them less ambitious. Still others want flexibility, creativity, or domestic life, but feel those desires are treated as inferior. So the issue isn't feminism as a whole. It's the pressure to conform to a single idea of empowerment. If empowerment truly means choice, then choice includes multiple paths: professional success, entrepreneurship, family-focused life, mixed lifestyle, creative or academic pursuits, partnership-based life. Fulfillment is not one-size-fits-all, and the emotional strain visible today online, socially, and personally is often the result of people being told what should matter to them rather than discovering what genuinely brings meaning. So instead of concluding that feminism has robbed anyone of purpose, the deeper takeaway may be this: purpose feels strongest when chosen freely, not externally assigned. Modern society is now in a phase where individuals are redefining what meaning looks like, not because empowerment failed, but because true empowerment must allow authenticity, not just ideology.